Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome back to yet another episode on Little's Law YouTube channel. So, in this video, as you have already seen, or as you already saw in the thumbnail, so this is going to be an end-to-end a load test or a performance testing using JMeter. So, we are going to start from the very beginning step, and we are going to end after the reporting part. So we're going to see how are we going to do this test, and we're going to cover the entire life history of one particular or one test which any performance tester do. So this is going to be a very long video, so in case if you want to just jump into the any other part which you want to, like I have just mentioned them in the timeline, please feel free to jump to the any of the phases of the testing or any of the one that you require to watch, but I would prefer you to watch the entire video at least once so that you can get an idea of how things work. So now let's start with the first thing, the first phase of the testing. So in this very first phase, what we are going to do is, let me just first give an overview of what are these phases and how are we going to migrate to each and every environment in every different phases. So the first phase is identifying the test environment. So during this phase, we identify the hardware, we identify the software. So hardware means the hardware of the application which is residing, so the hardware details, and the software, so whether it is built on Java, whether it is built on .NET or whatever the technology stack, the database and everything which are related to software. So we'll have to identify them, and then the network configurations which is configured for this application. So in case if there are any load generators, or if there are any firewall, so everything has to be taken into account and they have to be documented in this test environment phase. And then the tools available for testing team to design the test and identifying the performance testing challenges. So we're going to even decide on the performance testing tool of what we are going to do. So in this scenario or in this example, we are going to see JMeter as a tool, and then what we're going to see is, so we are going to find, or we're going to identify that the size of the machine which you're going to test. So the system which we have to test for the performance testing mostly should be a subset of the production system with fewer servers of lower specification, and it or otherwise it has to be a subset of the production system with fewer servers of the same specification. So it has to be either a lower specification, or it has to be either fewer servers with the same specification, and then it has to be a replica of the production system. So the reason we are asking it to be a replica of production system is only then we can emulate the real-time scenario. It should not be something like a dev environment, or it should not be something like a system integration environment. So it should be more than, or it should be closer to the production environment. So mostly we used to call this as a pre-production environment. And then the next phase is identifying the performance metrics. So in this phase, we will identify what are all the performance metrics that we are going to collect. So in many of the cases, the client or the user might come with lots of requirements to monitor, to make more metrics to be identified and has to be taken at the end of the test. But in this testing, so we are going to keep the response time throughput as the basic performance metrics. So we will keep them as the performance metrics that we are going to identify during this load test. And we are also going to identify that what are the success criteria for the performance testing. And then the third phase, which is planning and designing the performance tests. So in this phase, in the third phase, we will identify the performance test scenarios that we're going to test, and then we're going to identify the test data, whatever the test data which we are going to use for the testing, and then the target metrics. So for example, if you are into a banking application, you might need the dummy data of the bank customers, or if you are into an airline domain, we might need the sample, the test PNR numbers, or if you are into any of the other domain, you might need the related test data which you might need for testing. So all those things has to be fixed. So that should be the exit criteria. So only after you have got everything, you should move to the next phase, which is the configuring the test environment. So in this phase, we will prepare the elements of the test environment and instruments needed to monitor the resources. So that is what we do in the testing, the configuration of the testing environments. And then we'll go to the fifth phase or the fifth step, which is implementing our test design. So in this phase, we will develop the scripts. So whatever the scripts and the tool, using the tool which we are going to test, so we will create all the tests. And then in the sixth step or the sixth phase, we will execute the test. So in addition to running the performance test, monitoring and capturing the data also should be handled during this phase. So in this video, we will run different set of tests. We will see them one by one during the execution, because I do not want to just stop with a load test. I will just take you through multiple types of performance testing to understand what are all the objectives and how are we going to do that. Then finally, analyzing, reporting and retesting. So the first thing, which is analyzing the data and sharing the findings to the stakeholders, is very important in this phase, and that's the main priority. And then running the performance test again in case if there are any bottlenecks that has been identified and we have given any recommendations to tune it. So once everything is done, we will do the retest. So these are the very basic or the very must 7 steps that we are going to do for the testing. So on the way, I will share other important things which we will have to take care during the testing. So firstly, we will see which environment are we going to test. So we are going to use this JPEG store demo as part of our testing for this example. So we'll be using multiple scenarios out of it, and then during scripting, or I can even take you through multiple scenarios. So for example, in the very first scenario, we'll be having, so now we will start with documentation, because this is very important while doing any testing. So the very first phase, which is the identifying the test environment. So let me just make this here. So this is going to be the phase 1, and the application is going to be pet store in this example. Pet store, and then I will enter the URL here. So this is the URL which we are going to test. So in this way, we can have, or we will have to confirm this with the stakeholders, like who is in charge of this application. So we'll have to confirm everything before we move on to the next phase. So in case if you are creating something, some document like this, so you might be adding everything whichever you collected during the testing. So this is the first phase 1, and then let's add the second one, which is the phase 2. So in phase 2, here you can see, so this is phase 1, which is identifying test environment. And then in phase 2, which is the identifying performance metrics. So here we are going to collect the response time, which is minimum, average, maximum, 90th percentile and 95th percentile. And then we are going to collect the hits per second, or the other words, it is going to be the throughput. So these are the very basic metrics which we collect. So for now, let's start with this, and then let me add the phase 3, which is planning and designing performance test. So as we discussed, we will identify the performance testing scenarios. So we'll identify the scenario. So for now, the first scenario is going to be scenario 1 is going to be shopping fish Scenario 2 is going to be shopping dog. Scenario 3 is going to be shopping reptiles. Scenario 4 is going to be shopping cats. Scenario 5 is shopping birds. Scenario 6 is login and logout. Scenario 7, add to cart. So in this scenario we'll just keep on adding the items to the cart and we'll just leave it and go, because the reason to bring down all these is to make sure that we are emulating the real-time scenario, because not every user will do the shopping. So they might come, they might do some window shopping and then they will log out, and then they will do a, or they will pick the item at later point of time. So this is the scenario for that. And then the scenario 8 is going to be just search. So this user will not log in, but he will just search for the items. Okay, so now let's see. So we'll have to identify, so what are the test data that we might need. So for shopping fish, we might need the login details. So for everything, so for all these other things, we might need the login details. So that's very basic criteria that we need. And for this, we don't need any login details, but we might need some searching data. So something like a fish or something like any other random data. So for now, I just told you, so let's now have these stored, or like have these recorded, so that we might not be missing them, and going forward when we do further refinement, we'll be adding those items in the list. And then when we move on to phase 4, where we do the configuring the test environment, so here we are not going to do any monitoring. So for now, let's skip it, but still we will add that here. So this is phase 3, the previous one. And in case if you are doing any monitoring, something like using a New Relic or anywhere using an app dynamic, please do add that in here. Sorry, it's just okay. So this is going to be configuring the test environment, and then the phase 5. So in phase 5, we are going to see about implementing the test design, which is we are going to develop the test. So once we create, we can automatically come here and keep track of them. So for now, I'll just copy all these, and so far they are not completed, so we can keep it as not completed. And once you complete, you can automatically update, because we might have multiple team members working parallelly from different locations, and we might all have this in a collaboration way, so that we might all can update this document at the same time and keep them ready. So these are not completed, and in case if you are having a Jira board, or you might be using any agile, you might have, or you might assign those scripts to the particular person and he might complete it and record it. But in case if you do not have any collaboration tool, you can use Excel for that, and you can assign the person. So for example, like can assign who is the person who is going to make use of it, can assign who is the person who is going to make use of it by entering at symbol. And then the next one is going to be executing the test. So here we can keep track of what are all the tests that we're going to execute and how many iterations of tests we have completed. And then finally the reporting, the analyze, report and retest, So for now we can create a document in this way, and this will help you to keep track of. So let me just keep this here. So JMeter pet store performance test end to end, right? So this is going to be the document name, and we are ready. So let's go to the phase one, and we will see where are we. So we have identified these items, and now let's go to the second one, which is we have identified the performance metrics. And in case if we have any SLA, for example, like the minimum has to be less than 0.5 second, the average is going to be less than 1 second. So we'll just identify something like this, SLA in seconds. The maximum has to be less than 2 seconds. The 90th percentile has to be somewhere around less than 1.5. The 95th has to be less than 1.8. And the throughput that we can decide later, or we can identify during the test. And then now we are in the third phase, so where we have to plan and design the performance test. So for this, since we have got these as the scenarios, we have identified these as the scenarios. So what are we going to do? So for example, like if I can just take you through the scenario one. So why is the reason we have to identify these things? Like for example, if this is shopping fish, because in each and every step we might be understanding like what do we need. So for example, for the step one is going to be, let me just go back. So this is the landing page. So the step one is enter the landing page URL. So what do you need for that? We need this URL, and that is how the test has to be. And then in the step two, what do you need? So you click on enter the store, you click enter the store, and even you can add what is the checkpoint. So here in the previous page, so the checkpoint is, you might see, or you can even add this as assertion. So the assertion is, you might see welcome to JPEG store. So that is the assertion you might want to see. And then when you click on enter the store, just clicking on enter the store, and you have to see anything, something like the sign in or the fish. So the assertion has to be fish. Let me just type it here. And then the step three. So the step three is going to be, so there are two options. One is either you can add all the items and then you can sign in, or you can sign in and then go back and add all the items. So for now, so we'll try different scenarios for each and every flow instead of trying the same flow, because that's how every user does. So this third step is click on sign in. So you're going to click on sign in, and you will have to see this as the assertion, right? And then in step 4, we will enter the credential and click login. And for this, what do you need? You need username and password, which is just to be valid, because these you might need during your testing, because you might not be able to use the same username and password for every session. So we might need, at least if you are doing a test for 100 users, we might need at least 100 users username and password, a separate username and separate password. So what is the assertion? So you are entering the credential and clicking login. So let me enter, and the assertion is my account. And then the step 5. So in step 5, I'm going to click on fish. So in step 5, we are going to click on fish, and then you don't need any data here. And what is the assertion you have here? So we will choose this as the assertion. And now the step 6. So in step 6, we are going to click on a product. It can be anything. So we can do a correlation and we can choose any of these items during the testing. So for now, let's choose the first one. For example, the FISW01. So the item is going to be item is FISW01. And then what you're going to see is we can take it as anything like, again, FISW-01. So this has to be the assertion. And then in step 7, we are going to click on add to cart. So this is click on add to cart. And then we have the items here. We are not going to change any of the quantity. So in case if you are adding any quantity, we can add it as quantity must be 2, or it can be any number. It can be any, even can have it as any random number. So quantity must be random number. And then what is the assertion? So the assertion is here is shopping cart. Let me do this. And then the step 8. So what is the step 8? So step 8 is clicking on update cart, or I'm going to click on proceed to checkout. I'm clicking on proceed to checkout. So what we will, so we don't have any data here, but we will go to a screen where we will see payment details. And then now we are in the step 9 where we will enter the payment details and we click on continue. Enter payment details and click continue. So here you might need the payment card data, just a test payment card and data and address. And what is the assertion here? So the assertion here is going to be when you click on continue, so it has to be please confirm and press continue. And then in step 10, so this is the last step, I think. Yep. So here I'm going to click on confirm. There are no data required, and when I click on confirm, I could see thank you, your order has been submitted. And then the last step, yes, so the last step is any time when you are logging into the application, make sure the user logs out, he signs out of the application. Signing out is the action, and then we don't need any data. And clicking on sign out, so for example I will just click on sign out. So this should be the transaction. So the reason I'm giving all these here is we can easily use them as our transaction names. So that's the reason I'm adding these here. So let me give the heading here a step number and transaction names, test data required. And so when you document everything, it will be very easy for you to use during your creation of the test script. So clicking on sign out. So once you click on sign out, you will see this sign in. So this is just an example of creating the scenario. So same way we'll have to create for all the other scenarios. And before I complete, so this is an example for a web application. What if you are going to design, or what if you're going to design for an API call? So let's design for API call. So this one is going to be, so let's divide these here. So this is going to be a web application. This is going to be a web application. So same way, all these scenarios will be a web application. This is going to be an API call, because nowadays we have a combination of every different application. So the search is going to be an API call. So how are we going to do that? So for example, so this is the application that we're going to test, and search is the action. So for example, if you are searching for a fish, right? So we'll have to identify that scenario. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to right click on it, and then I'm going to click on inspect. Then I'm going to network and doing a search again. And this is the action for that. So let me just pick this up. So this is going to be the URL. So when you're following, or when we want to test the URL, so the API call, we'll have to have the URL. Let me just copy it again, copy and pasting it here. So copy, I'm trying to paste it, copy it, remove, okay, yes, okay. So this is going to be the URL, or I can even take it from Notepad, since we might need this to be very clear. Okay, so this is going to be the so this is going to be the URL which we are going to use for testing. And what is the method? So the method is going to be post, right? So these are the two things which we need. So we will use these in the data and then the test data. So it can be either fish or dog or reptile. So it can be anything, which is depending on our testing scenario. So far we have designed the performance testing for scenario 1 for the web application 1. If I want to take you through all the scenarios, it will take a whole day. So I'm just taking you with just only one example. So the first example is going to be the scenario 1, which is shopping fish. So I have given the step names, step numbers, the transaction names, and the test data required, and then the assertions part. So whatever we need for execute, like whatever we need to confirm during the testing. And then when it's coming for the API call, so we'll need to have the URL, and then we will have to have the method name and then the test data. So with that, we come to an end for this part 1 of JMeter performance testing end to end. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Watch all the videos end to end. This will be going to be more exciting and entertaining. Please do subscribe to our channel, and I believe this video would have been very useful to you. So in our next video, we are going to the phase 4, which is the configuring the test environment, and then we are going to go to the scenarios where we are going to create the scripts. So wait for more informative videos. Please do subscribe to our channel. Please do support our channel.